Hi, I'm Atticus. You might know my mom, Heather Erbe from Shine.fm. This is the Shine.fm Momcast. Take it away, Mom.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on the Momcast today. My guest today is Wendy Grimes. Wendy, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Well, again, my name is Wendy Grimes, and I'm from Canton, Ohio. I've been married for 25 years to Heather's brother.
Wait! Oh, that's right. We were going to tell people that, weren't we?
And then I have 3 daughters. The oldest is married, and she's 23, and the next one is 21, another daughter, and then my last one is 19. The oldest is obviously married. She's finished with college, and the other 2 are in college right now.
And they actually are not, for the most part, at home.
Correct. They live in the dorms.
So what I want to talk to you about today is what it's like to be an empty nester, because now you've been an empty nester for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So my first question for you is, did you cry when Shannon left the house for the first time? You know, like when you had to send her off, she's your oldest first. And did you cry when the youngest left the house?
I did not cry. It was just, I think I stepped back and it was a little surreal, you know, and I sometimes in situations like that, I pretend that's not a thing. Like we moved her into the dorm, move her in the door, pack up her whole life.
This is not happening.
Nope. Put her, box her stuff up and say, all right, have a good night, you know, as if she's coming back home. And so it might have been a week or 2 later, you know, or even just a couple days later when her room stayed exactly the same and the door was open and no one was using it, that I would just feel a little bit sad, like, I wonder what she's doing, and, you know, things like that. So it wasn't like a moment like it is for kindergarten, I think, when people drop their child off for the first time and just the big wide world, but it was more a amount of time over time that we saw, like, oh, wait, she's literally not sitting at the table with us for dinner, or some of the daily, I don't have any idea what she's doing today or how she is, where you naturally just, I think when you're in the same home, that those things occur more often. So
What about with the last one? How was that different than the first one?
I was more ready for that. I think because the independence that you experience with your children in high school, and there's a lot of like push and pull and, you know, maybe just some arguing or discussions or just butting heads over things. You can see when they're ready, like they are ready to fly and head on out, you know, and you're kind of more excited for that because for us, we saw what our other 2 had gone through. And even though there were some tough things, when they left our home and when they graduated from college or got close to that, the changes were amazing and exciting and fun and scary and all those things to see. So I think I was excited for her. Like she was ready. And I think partially because the other 2 had gone. And so that was something that she was excited for. So I was excited for her. I was ready. It was more of a gradual, not a tragic, like I'm going to hold on to her as tight as possible and not let her go. I could see the benefit of her leaving and that it was time.
Okay, cool. So what do you think has been the hardest part about being an empty nester?
Let's see. I think it's the silence. One of the things that bugged, you know, that you the most when you have children and it's busy is the noise. You know, you're just constantly like, why is it so noisy and why are they blah, 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 you know, but I think it was the silence. Like literally my husband and I both work full time and we would come home and it was just so quiet and, you know, and we would make a dinner and it was fine. And we were happy to spend that time together, but literally running out of stuff to say, you know, so like where before there would always be someone in a room or, you know, the TV's on or something. It's literally just us, you know, and so we would sometimes separate. We'd talk about everything we had to talk about and, you know, and he'd do something, piddle off somewhere and I'd read a book or, you know, work out or something like that. And so it was weird and quite an adjustment to that silence. And I, for the most part, am an introvert. And so I appreciate being alone. The alone time is great, but it was just odd. It had been, you know, 20 some years of noise, just little voices, and whether they're talking to you or not, you know, they're just in the building. So there's a little sense of that.
What do you think was the best thing about them all being gone?
Again, the silence. I'm just kidding.
It was both and. It was hard, but it was the best.
Just so I wasn't clear. The silence is great. I think the cleanliness, we had just talked about this earlier. We were out having this discussion, but just you leave something, you know, somewhere and you come back and it's still there. You know, you buy food at the store, it's all yours, you know, pretty much.
No one else is coming home to eat it.
You don't have to hide anything from the children so they don't eat it, like the good chocolate, which is something that I still do. But yeah, just things like that just the house was clean. We cleaned it on one day and it stayed clean for 3 or 4 days. There was no extra shoes anywhere. And for the most part, my husband and I try to keep things where they're supposed to be. So that's like one of my jokes when the kids come home. Like I have pillows on the couches and just decorative type things. And those pillows are chucked on the floor every time they have a seat, just thrown, and the blankets are used and then just wadded up rather than draped nicely over the back of the couch. So I think that part of it, just like, wow, the house stayed clean and this is quite a delight. There's less stuff there. They took a lot with them. So that part of it was surprisingly nice.
Yeah. After all those years.
Like, this is actually my house.
Yeah, right. You're like, wait, my stuff stays where I put it.
I can find everything, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
So let's talk about how your marriage has been different. You talked a little bit about the fact that like you enjoyed your time together, but then you were like, okay, we said all that we could say. What are some things that you found to be different about your marriage now that the kids were all gone? But also, what are some things that you did to make sure that when all those kids were gone, that you were still like, oh, I still like you. And because I think it's really easy for so many people to get caught up in taking care of the kids and not really enriching their marriage and making sure that you still are connected and like each other after all of that is over.
Right. I think I failed in this area in some ways because we aren't the people that went on a date night once a week. And I do recommend that you do that and that you let other people watch your children, or you let go of something that you think that they have to have and they'll be fine, to pay attention to your spouse. I think that women, we struggle with this more. Like my husband has no problem like going out with me and doing something and not thinking about the children for 2 minutes. I go everywhere and think about the children, whether they live in my house or they don't, or what are they doing. And they're always kind of in the back of my head. And so I know it was me that kept us from doing that. I'd be like, well, we'll just put him to bed and then we'll stay home. But I don't pay attention to him when I'm home. Like I don't give him my full attention. Even now that they're gone, it's hard for me because I'm thinking of things I need to do. So I wish that I had done more of that one-on-one time, because I think I'll answer that question both ways, because now that they are gone, we've had to come up with ways to reconnect and to remember what we have in common besides the children and the bills and this house and those kinds of things. And so it's been fun to reconnect and actually ask him about his day and listen about his day, and vice versa, and to really care, where I think before I'd just been like, oh yeah, great, you next, we'd move on to the next child. And that super mom sort of shifty way that we get, and we just check that off the list. Great, you're taken care of.
Okay,
super,
I
great.
Listen, that's
exactly. And so we've been able to have the freedom to watch television together, where you didn't realize when the kids were home, like you were careful about obviously what they could see or what was appropriate or what they liked, and you wanted them to spend time with you. So you're just like, well, whatever you want to watch, whether you really enjoyed it or not. So that's been fun for us to find shows that we both find interesting, and that we can sit and connect together, where I don't know that we always do that someone would go upstairs and, separate. So that has been nice to kind of reconnect. Like, this is our TV and we can choose something that we want to watch.
That you both together.
Exactly. Yeah. So I haven't been super great about that, but we're trying now even still to just be like, what do we like to do? We don't even know what we like to do outside of our children. We work our jobs, and we didn't do a great job of like keeping hobbies that were the same. He rode bikes and I walked. And so we walk the dog together. We try to do a lot of things together, which is cute, but also funny because he's always like kind of following me around. Like, are we walking the dog? And I was like, well, we don't have to walk the dog, But wait, you want to spend time with me? That's great. Okay. So those things like that. So I think it still has to be intentional. It's a lot easier just because you're literally there, all the time together. So.
Interesting. Okay. So tell us some of the ways that you have gotten creative with still staying connected to your grown children now that they're gone. I mean, obviously I would say technology plays a huge role in 20-somethings lives. And so it's obviously a way that you could do that. But share with our listeners just some of the things that you have done, because you said the kids are always in the back of your mind. So how are ways that you have connected with them even though they're grown?
I do use social media, and I try to stay up to date I did through their high school years on what everyone's doing. And so I have Instagram and I have Snapchat and I have some things, obviously the ages of my kids, those things are all appropriate. But I Snapchat them. I have a snap streak with each of my children where every day they see my face, whether, I'm doing something or making a funny face or making fun of something your dad's doing or the dog or something, just as a way like, hey, I exist, and they do the same. And so I see them if they look like a hot mess and maybe I'll swipe up and I can respond. Like someone looks exhausted or they say something about not sleeping well.
Right,
it's a good opportunity for me to see your face, acknowledge that you exist, and kind of, make some reference to that. So I try to keep in touch by showing them things that we're doing or something around the house so they don't forget about us. But also, I think we've talked about this before, and whenever I think of one of them, a lot of times you don't want to bother your children when they're away at college. I don't want to be that mom who's like, how's your day? And, checking it every day. Like, thanks, Mom, I'm good. I need to give them that space. Right. But when I'm legitimately thinking about them and I haven't talked to one of them in a while, I will just send them that little emoji on the iPhone where the girl's like raising her hand. There's a little one, and it's a little dark haired girl, and she has her hand right up, and it's my way of saying hi. I don't say anything else, and I just wait and see what happens. So periodically they'll just get one of those, and every single time they respond instantly. Like, Mom, that's so cute. And then I was like, oh, well, just thinking about you, just letting you know I'm thinking about you. And it starts a little conversation without me seeming like I'm prying or I'm like too much. So it's just my subtle way of like, I acknowledge that you exist. Hi. If you want to talk to me, I'm here. If you don't, it's totally fine. Sometimes they forget about it or it gets lost in their other messages, but it's just my quiet way of like letting you know I'm here. But I'm not going to harass you if you want it. Don't want to be bothered. So
absolutely. So tell me something that you wish someone would have told you before you became an empty nester.
I think just the reminder that our jobs as parents is for our children to eventually leave. For me to realize that sooner, I think maybe somewhere in high school I figured that out. Panicked a little bit, like, oh wait, you people are gonna have to make your own decisions. I need to give you some freedom here, but just to keep that in mind, even if you have a 2-year-old at home or a 3-year-old and you're, letting them wipe themselves or they're, doing something that's hard and you want to swoop in and help them, to let them to kind of experience some failure, to make a bad choice, but for you to be there to see it, and to get ready. Like eventually they are gonna leave, hopefully, right?
Right. That's the
they
goal.
can be 25.
That's what we should all be working for.
But
right?
at 18, legitimately every one of our children could leave our homes, whether it's to have a job, get married, God forbid that early. Just kidding. But or go to college or whatever God has for them. I think that to have that in your mind, to look at your child exactly who they are, what their weaknesses are, their strengths, to see them as a little adult and to begin to prepare them. And I know they call it an empty nest for a reason, but it's your little birds are in there. And a mother bird teaches those little birds, how to find some worms. And she has them for such a tiny amount of time. She really does. And then she just takes off one day, and those little fellas, they go and they fly or they don't, or they fail,
Right.
And so if we look at it that way, that literally this is our nest for a time, and there's a time when these people won't be under our care, and that we're going to need to trust them and trust God with them. But that if everything we do is to prepare them for that time when we are not watching them like hawks,
right.
And that just to let them fail. I think I would have let them fail more. I didn't. And so they failed some in college, and whether I was there to pick them up or not, or I don't even know about it still,
right.
things like that. But to let them make a bad choice and to watch it happen, and let them handle a relationship incorrectly, maybe not in a kind way that you would have, done.
Wanted them to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like I raised you in a certain way but they're ultimately still, and I think what I've started to think about, because I have teenagers now, is there's ultimately going to be a time where they're going, like you said, have to make those decisions for themselves, but I want to try to help them make navigate through those mistakes right now, because like you said, there may be things that your girls experience that you don't even know about because it happened in college or that kind of thing. One thing I did want to touch on, and this kind of came out of a conversation we had off mic, was that how does that role change, and how do you navigate through that as a mom? I mean, you're dealing now with grown-ups, but you're still mom, and there are times, I'm sure, when the girls want to treat you like an equal and want to respond to you like an equal, but you're clearly not. How has that been hard for you? Because I think, in my mind, I think it's hard to flip that switch, even if they're not there all the time. You're like, wait. No, I gave birth to you, and you will still respect me as your mother, even though you're 20 years old.
We experience that every summer and every Christmas break.
When they come back.
There's just a reminder of the pecking order and how things work.
But I mean, how have you navigated that with them, allowing them to still be their adult selves because they are, and you would want that process to, like, you would want them to do with you what they would do with anybody who felt disrespected or felt hurt by their behavior, or vice versa.
Right.
They're hurt by your behavior. So how have you navigated through that?
I think stepping back and learning who they are as people, that's something that we've discussed, just their personality types and how they think and work, and I can hurt them in different ways because they're different people, and not to treat them all blanket like exactly the same. To remember that while they've been away from our home, they've grown, they've changed, and not to assume they're 15 and they're going to act exactly how they were when they were 15. I think I have to let go of some of the things that were important or were non-negotiables when they lived there, like making their bed or keeping their room clean, or those things that you were like in training. I was in training. Right. Now they've gone away to school, and I have one that came home and she's super neat. Got to make that bed. Got to, she feels crazy if things aren't put away. And I have another that couldn't care less about it. And so I can die on that hill and keep trying to train what I already trained for 15 years, or 18 years. Right. Or I can just go, that's her choice. That's what she's chosen to do. And so some things you back off and you go, okay, this, I'm not going to keep parenting you over this thing. You seem to have survived and you're doing fine without a clean room. So I'm going to let that go. But it might be something where they challenge you. Like my girls, when they're at school, don't have to ask permission to go anywhere. They go. They do things. I don't know what hour, or if they're eating unhealthily. When they come home, I always struggle with reminding them how to eat. Did you have lunch? Like super helpful. Did you eat lunch? Are you drinking enough water? Did you brush your teeth? Things that I don't know. Do they do that? Do they care about their teeth? Do they care about their nutrition? When they're gone, I have no idea. I'm not in charge of that. And so to let some freedom when it comes to those, I trust that when you're hungry, you'll eat, because that's what people do. Somehow you're still alive.
Adults do that, right?
But it's really easy to fall back into those patterns. So to show them that respect by backing off. And we talked today about how, there's one thing that I'll say to one of them and confront them on, but there's 99 things I left unsaid that I might have said when they lived at home. So there's the one thing, and maybe it's a disrespect issue, or it's didn't plan something or tell me a plan that they had, and now I had made dinner thinking all of us would be home, but two of them are going to be gone. Well, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that if I had known that. So things like that, hey, you're going to need to let me know when you will be home and when you're taking the car, or you have to communicate. So the communication thing is really important to me. And then it's okay for us to banter back and forth and discuss an issue or something that's going on, or if you disagree with something I said, but it needs to be done respectfully. So we can be friends and we can go shopping and laugh and joke around together, but at the same time, I'm still your mama, what I say still goes, and you need to respect that. So I think that's a dance.
Was that transition, did you feel like you I would suspect I would fumble through that and make some pretty big mistakes in that, because I think we have parented them for 18 years in a certain way to deserve a certain amount of communication and respect. And then they go.
Yes.
And like you said, we know nothing. They're not eating right. They might not be getting water. They might not do anything right. But then when they come back, we do have that tendency. So how have you given your daughters an opportunity, just you talked a little bit about it, but if you would go into a little bit more detail about what are some things that you've gone, I really screwed that up, and how have you handled that with them as adults?
I think it would be more like a trial and error. Like my oldest to my youngest, you'll feel a very different way. I handled different things, whether in high school or in college. But my oldest, when she went away, I was so afraid of everything that she was going to do, and I did worry about her, and I'd stalk her quietly. Anytime she mentioned a boy, I would go deep dive on Instagram, and I would find his parents and his home address, and I'm ready to go for his ACT score. I was just, who are these people and what are they doing with my daughter? And there was a level of crazy, that I didn't have an open communication with her, and I didn't trust her. And so I hadn't really fostered that in high school. I didn't let go. I held really tight. And so I wasn't really sure she was ready to leave, because I had smothered her or hovered over every decision she ever made. So when she went, there was a lot of freedom she had that she hadn't felt before. And she may have made some decisions or things, just because it was her freedom to fail. It's her decision to make, her relationship choices or things that she kept from me that I didn't know about till later. Whereas you go down the line by the third one, I had figured that out, so even while she was home, I fostered communication a little bit better with relationships, so that it didn't make her close off from me or just trying to be chill, which isn't my nature, and just about boys, as we've talked about, and just like, oh, so how was that? And acting slightly disinterested, but secretly wanting to know all the details. And that I kind of gotten a little bit better about being more relaxed and letting them accidentally share things with me if they wanted to, and if they didn't, not being mad about it, you know, and things like that. So by my youngest, who's much more communicative and talks to me about everything, now she's in college and I know everything, you know, and I don't know if that's her personality or if that was more of me just starting the process
that earlier. Yeah. And just to touch on the whole, like, you gotta be chill thing, I just want to address that with our listeners, because Wendy has actually said to me, with my teenage girl who had boys that were interested in her, and me wanting to know every little thing, because it was, and really in a lot of ways for me, I was excited for her because she was a sophomore or she was a freshman, and there was a boy who seemed really, really nice, I really liked, and you know, was a nice guy, you know, and so I just wanted to know, and I would go way overboard. And then Wendy would say, you got to dial it down and work on your chill. And I'm like, I don't do chill. And she goes, I know, I don't either, but we need to work on it. So chill is just like being kind of relaxed and allowing, because what I found is when I didn't push those things, then things came out.
Yes.
Like, oh, hey, by the way, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And then I had to go, no, don't ask a follow-up. Nope, don't say second. No, just leave it. And I would have to like self-talk myself off that second follow-up question, you know, because that's all she wanted to tell me at the time. So I think it can be very helpful for us, like you said, to start that earlier with our kids and give them some of that freedom, allow them to fail while we're still in the midst of parenting them, instead of being scared of what that freedom comes from. Because you said with the first one you were really fearful, but the third one you were like, oh, like I started this process 2 years ago. Now I'm to the point where I know she's ready. So at least I guess you can learn. And I'm sure with all, you know, and my daughter says this, who's the oldest, I feel like you make all the mistakes on me. Yep, I do actually, because you're the first one.
Exactly.
But we do get better and we learn, you know, all that.
And she can help us. The oldest can help us if she's a talker and willing to say, hey, Mom, you're overstepping something here. I think too, it's I call it accidental, just kind of accidental chill, but like where you're accidentally, it looks like it's accidental, but you're intentionally spending time with them, but they don't know that you are. So it's volunteering to pick up the girls after something that you don't want to do, but you're accidentally in the car with them, and there's no eye contact being made. Like you would love that. Everyone thinks like, oh, I can't wait till my teenage daughter and I shop and we have coffee together and we look across the table and share our hearts. Nope, that's not going to happen. You're going to need to drive her and her friends obnoxiously in the car, listening to pop music at a very loud volume in the car, and just being chill about it, like acting like that's super fun. And do you want to have them over? Let's have them over, you know, and sitting down and playing a game with them, even though you don't want to, so that you just happen to be there and you happen to hear stories, and they start to relax, and their friends are like, oh my gosh, your mom is interesting. I want to tell her about my problem. And they start to see you through their friends' eyes. And so it's being a friend to their friends and just connecting in a way, like being the mom that is mentally available, not just the one that gives them everything that they want or lets them eat junk food, but you just accidentally are there. Like you don't disappear into another room, that you're just, and you're not shocked by conversations or things that are happening. And that one's the trickiest one, is the first time someone says something that a boy did, or some girl in their class, or someone uses bad language or something, and you're just, oh, but we can't be around that girl anymore. And you don't literally freak out, even though inside you're freaking out. You're like, oh, okay, well, how do you feel about that when she does that? Or, you know, and inside you're dying. It's just, I think to have that relaxed demeanor of washing the dishes together and talking about your day, and you talk about yours, and you're like, hey, what's going on with so-and-so? And you're going to get information, you know, that they are accidentally telling you. And it sounds manipulative, but it's really not. It's just being available. And we as moms have enough to do that we could easily not see our children in the evenings. Go do your homework, go make your bed, go do your laundry, whatever, and just and then go to bed, and then be mad that they don't talk to us. So like to really be available, I think that's what I lacked. My parents were always there, super supportive, you know, but I don't feel like they were ever available. I felt like I was always bothering them to ask a question or to let them know I had a problem, and they didn't check on me a whole lot, didn't seem to be paying attention to my emotions or my feelings. But to have someone at that important middle school time, you know, when you're just a hot mess, and for your mom to be aware that you're a hot mess, and she can talk about how she was, you know, and just be super relaxed and have those hard conversations without eye contact. That's key. always happens in the car, always happens side by side when you're doing an activity.
Right.
So baking a cookie, doing something else, but every time that you would make that connection, I think is really important during this time. So
cool.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yep, I think you did. Yeah, no, I wanted to kind of address that a little bit. Anything else that you would say to encourage, people who are on the cusp of being empty nesters?
I think it's again, to reiterate, to remember that that's your job, that you had these children, but not to hold them close to you your whole lives and to be their most important person, that you want to set them up to have relationships and friendships and possibly a future spouse, and that to be a high functioning human, I try to look at it as like, I'm not perfect. I know everything that's wrong with me. And I didn't want to raise 3 more people just like me. That if I'm going to do anything, I want my kids to be better and do better and think better and be more mature than I could ever be. And then I'm multiplying greatness times 3, And so that wisdom that you have as a parent, if you can somehow impart that to your little ones that I don't feel like I necessarily started out with, times 3. So if you have 5 children, times 5, that those people can go and do and change the world in a way that you by yourself, holding them really tight, never could. Like you keep them right here in your little tiny circle and your little bubble of safety, and they never get hurt and they never get to make choices or blossom into who they are. That's not what God wants, and that's not why we had children. Hopefully, is just to keep so that we can have someone, but to remember to foster friendships, to remember why you loved your spouse in the beginning, and to kind of keep that and know that eventually he's still going to be yours. Hopefully, if you can make it through these years, that he's still going to be there, and this is your guy, and this is the one you're going to come home to every night, and those little people aren't going to be there. Right. To keep fostering, I think to keep friendships. My hardest thing is that I didn't keep a lot of friends outside of my children. So everyone who they were friends with, I just was friends with their mom. Or if they dated a boy that we liked and he hung around for a while, I was friends with their mom. So as those friendships broke up or the relationships broke up, I lost a friend at the same time because that got weird, So I forgot to live my life in such a way and to be involved in things where I could have a friend that was literally just me, that had nothing to do with my children, whether at church or work or whatever, and to intentionally do things with that person. So I think that's another thing that I would recommend that I did not do correctly. There's a lot I didn't do correctly, but that's why I'm talking to you.
That's right. That's what we learn. We're learning from you.
That's right.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today and talking about this, Wendy. I appreciate you being on the Momcast.
Thank you for having me.